friend, welcome to this study. It's August now, and the height of the summer, just that transitional funny month when summer turns to autumn, when the glory of all of the flowers and nature and animals has blossomed to its fullest, and start very slowly to think about preparing for the colder months ahead, but not before we have one last revelry in the longer days and the warmer weather. Though we can hear breezes rustling the fall leaves of the trees, the green big leaves that have had all summer to grow big and lush, and the lazy days go by. This funny month where in Britain and most of Europe is the summer holiday month, but in other parts of the world, including the southern United States, it will be soon time to return to school and work. So for this funny transitional month, I have some beautiful paper sounds for you, a bit of poetry, and a book about Australian Parliament. We'll start with this lovely box of stationery. This box is one that is sent out every month by a UK-based company called London Letters. Every month they send a themed stationery box. Focusing on a particular kind of letter writing, encouraging people to write. You can see this paper, lovely paper, that they have in different neutral tones, and the texture is lovely. It feels like cotton pulp paper. It's very soft, and the edges cut very precisely. Look at that. And here's another one with such a soft texture and a nice weight to it as well. I'm sure it will be perfect for writing with fountain pens. And here, for the month of August, to affix to your recipient's letter or note, reminders of the summer months, ferns with their green leaves, and some beautiful anemones and clover and morning glory flowers. It says, August is open letters. This month we've been looking into the history of open letters, how they've affected politics and created movements of change. Open letters are written to an individual or group of people, but intended for publication in a newspaper or journal. They can address a motive or reasoning by articulating each point intended to be put across, and they can be used to access a wide audience of people that it would be otherwise difficult to reach. And as an example letter, there's nice papers on there. They've included one from Siegfried Sassoon. Siegfried Sassoon was the subject of a recent film. He was an English war poet and writer during the Great War, or World War I. He was decorated for bravery on the Western Front, attaining his CBE and Military Cross. A lot of his poetry describes the horror he witnessed in the trenches and the pathos of a lost generation. But he also satirized what he found to be patriotic pretensions of those he felt were responsible for the war. And this is his open letter to the Times, after which, and because of which, he was sent to Craig Lockhart War Hospital, where he met Wilfred Owen, a fellow poet who edited the hospital's magazine called The Hydra, in which some of his poems were put. And this is Sassoon's letter to the Times, 6th July 1917. I am making this statement as an act of willful defiance of military authority, because I believe the war is being deliberately prolonged by those who have the power to end it. I am a soldier, convinced that I am acting on behalf of soldiers. I believe that this war upon which I entered as a war of defense and liberation has now become a war of aggression and conquest. I believe that the purposes for which I and my fellow soldiers entered upon this war should have been so clearly stated as to have made it impossible to change them, and that had this been done, the objects which actuated us would now be attainable by negotiation. I have seen and endured the suffering of the troops, and I can no longer be a party to prolong these sufferings for ends which I believe to be evil and unjust. I am not protesting against the conduct of the war, but against the political errors and insincerities for which the fighting men are being sacrificed. On behalf of those who are suffering now, I make this protest against the deception which is being practiced on them. Also, I believe that I may help to destroy the callous complacence with which the majority of those at home regard the continuance of agonies which they do not share, and which they have not sufficient imagination to realize. And these are the beautiful pieces of stationery sent in the August box. some note cards. A nice heavy stock card. A little note. An envelope. A white one with gold foil, just to say, and a plain one. A card with an envelope that says, "Open me," with rose gold foil. And then we have our open letter template, to whom it may concern. Kind regards. This is watermarked. You can see very nice, beautiful paper there, and some heavier stock for extra pages to encourage you to write a letter to the editor, the newspaper, or even your member of parliament or congressman or woman, to effect some positive change in the world. Other ways you can effect positive change in this world is to take care of yourself, your spirit, your mind, your heart, so that you can go out with confidence and smile at someone and make their day just that little bit better. And there's some envelopes. We have all different colors: white, off-white, grey. Very nice paper, so soft. So that's the August box from London Letters. Now, not to end with the pathos of poor Siegfried Sassoon's open letter. He did survive the war, though many of his generation did not, though their poetry survives. Siegfried Sassoon did write, the year after the ceasefire in 1919, a poem called Idyll, setting the scene of peace in the half-light of the early summer morning as he awaits his beloved in a garden. In the grey summer garden I shall find you, with daybreak and the morning hills behind you. There will be rain-wet roses, stir of wings, and down the wood a thrush that wakes and sings. Not from the past you'll come, but from that deep where beauty murmurs to the soul asleep. And I shall know the sense of life reborn, from dreams into the mystery of morn, where gloom and brightness meet, and standing there till that calm song is done, at last we'll share the league spread, choiring symphonies that are joy in the world, and peace, and dawn's one star. And this is a beautiful expression after having seen the horror of the trenches, of peace after this war to end all wars, an awareness that he will go on living, that he has a future. His spirit is reborn, returned from the precipice, and is filled with the joy of what this new day will bring. So going on the theme of politicians, I brought this book out that we can look at together so that you can relax and sleep. Or maybe find out a few things. It's called Questions and Answers on the Commonwealth Parliament of Australia. And I have, in my time, written to my MP in Australia when I lived there, and I have written and still do write to my MP here in Britain. So always remember that you can make a difference. Your voice is important. The systems of government, the Constitution, the Commonwealth Parliament, and the Senate, House of Representatives, making an Act of Parliament, the executive government or ministry, and parliamentary reporting staff. We'll go through a few of the things in this book, but not word for word of everything. What system of government does Australia use? Australia has adopted a federal system of parliamentary government. Under this system, lawmaking and political powers are constitutionally divided between two tiers of parliamentary government, federal and state. The Australian Constitution defines federal powers and leaves the residue of powers to the states. The next one is quite interesting, so we'll read that one as well. Why did Australia adopt a federal system of government? In the 19th century, people in Australia began to recognize a need for a central authority to oversee common areas between the colonies. Remember, Australia was not joined as one unified nation yet until 1901. In particular, defense, immigration, telegraphic and postal services, customs and duties, and tariff policy. However, the colonies had developed their own political structures based on the British parliamentary system, and they did not wish to lose control over matters that fell within their boundaries. A federal system became the preferred option, as it allowed each colony to retain control over its internal affairs, while enabling common problems to be addressed by a central federal government. How did the United Kingdom and the United States of America influence Australian system. Australian governments have been strongly influenced by the United Kingdom, principally because the people of the several colonies were almost wholly British in origin and were familiar with the traditions of the bicameral parliamentary system. That is, having two houses or chambers of parliament. Under parliamentary government, those responsible for exercising executive power, ministers, are drawn from those members of both houses who belong to the party or coalition of parties with a majority in the House of Representatives. The executive remains in office while it has the confidence of that House. This system of responsible government ensures that the executive is answerable and accountable to Parliament for the conduct of the government. A major difference between the United Kingdom and Australia lies in the composition of the Houses of Parliament. Members of the House of Lords in the United Kingdom either inherit or are appointed to their position, whereas senators in Australia are elected by the people. The United Kingdom had and still maintains a system of political organization in which almost all the governing power resides in a single centralized government. Faced with a collection of often competing and disparate colonies, the founders of Australia's constitution looked to other federal systems, in particular those in Canada and the United States of America, to help them establish Australia's federation. The United States provided not only the working model for, but also the names of the two houses of the federal parliament. That is, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Thus, Australia adopted the United States' idea of sharing legislative power between two houses with an elected membership, but retained the British tradition of the executive, that is, the ministry, being members of and accountable to Parliament. This tells about the Australian Constitution. Was enacted by the United Kingdom Parliament on 9th of July 1900, the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act of 1900. Following a 10-year period when constitutional conventions were held in Australia to draft the Constitution. And there's our organization, Senate and House of Representatives. How Parliament makes a law and how changes are affected to the Constitution. All of this laid out in the Constitution. In 1983, the state of Tasmania appealed to the High Court of Australia against the Commonwealth legislation, which in effect prohibited the Tasmanian government from constructing a dam on the Franklin River in southwest Tasmania. The Tasmanian government considered the Commonwealth's action an infringement of their state's rights. It's an illustration of how changes are validated and referendums. All of these referendums between 1901 and 1996. A day in the life of a member of the Commonwealth Parliament. Representatives are known as members of the House of Representatives and senators. Members and senators spend an average of 75 sitting days a year at Parliament House in Canberra. On these days, the chamber is the principal focus of their work. It is here that they formally debate and vote on matters that are before the Parliament. However, the activities that they undertake in the chamber are only the tip of a large iceberg of work. Here we have committees and how they keep in touch with the community. Traditions and customs of the Parliament. When a senator or member enters or leaves the chamber of either house, he or she bows to the chair as a gesture of respect. Often members of one house refer to the other house as another place. This practice originated out of the ill feeling between the House of Lords and House of Commons in England. Members are not addressed directly and are not referred to by their names. Remarks are addressed to the chair. In the House of Representatives, members are referred to by the name of the electorate they represent. For example, the Honourable Member for Riverina Darling, or by their title, for example, the Prime Minister. However, in the Senate, though senators are not addressed directly, they are referred to by name. It is a tradition that the sovereign or the sovereign's representative, which would be the Governor-General in Australia, never enters the House of Representatives while it is sitting. This custom has its origins in an incident in 1642, when Charles I, accompanied to the door of the House of Commons by an armed guard, took the Speaker's chair and demanded the surrender of 5 members: Hampden, Pym, Hollis, and Hasselridge and Strode, accused of treasonable utterances in the House. This action was regarded by the House of Commons as a breach of its rights, and to this day, no British sovereign has entered that house. During the ceremony to mark the beginning of the new session of Parliament, the usher of the Black Rod, the sovereign's messenger, is challenged by the Sergeant-at-Arms, very much the same as in Britain. Although in Britain the door on the house has a huge dent in it from the hundreds of years of the Black Rod banging against it. When he or she arrives at the entrance of the House of Representatives to summon the members of that house to the Senate to hear the Governor-General's opening speech, the tradition is regarded as a symbol of the House of Representatives' right of freedom to speech and uninterrupted debate. Don't know if it's quite as dramatic as the opening of Parliament in Britain. Knowing Australia, it's probably a lot more laid back of an occasion. There's the opening of Parliament. The ceremony there. Broadcasting of parliamentary proceedings. Commonwealth of Australia arms and parliamentary badges. There's Australia's arms with the kangaroo and emu, and the 7-pointed Commonwealth star, each point symbolizing one of the states. And there are the two badges, the Senate badge with the rod in front, and the Representatives badge, the rod behind. And here we have the section on the Senate. There are 76 senators, 12 senators for each state, and 2 senators each for the Australian Capital Territory and Northern Territory. So each state has the same number, and the territories get 2. And here we have Black Rod again. Usher of the Black Rod dates from the 14th century. The holder of this title was originally an officer of the most noble order of the Garter. And here we have quorums and voting in the Senate and debates on the Senate floor. Limits of debates: first reading, speech and reply, in committee, second reading. All of the rules of order that the speaker should be following, making sure everyone follows. This talks about the actual chamber in Canberra. And more on the Black Rod. Very prominent person. And there is the floor plan of the Senate chamber for the Commonwealth of Australia. The President sits there and makes sure all of the rules of order are followed. We have independents and minor parties. Government here on the President's right, and the opposition on the left. And there's a typical day in the Senate. Prayers, tabling of government documents, questions, petitions, notices of motion, rearrangement of business, matters of public importance or motions of urgency, ministerial statements, more tabling of documents, messages, order of business, consideration of the government documents, and adjournment. And there's a usual week of business. They start at 2 o'clock Monday and Tuesday, and 9:30 a.m. Wednesday and Thursday. Senate committees. There are all the committees: arts, environment, recreation. Now we come to the House of Representatives. The most distinctive features of the House of Representatives are: it is the House which determines who shall be the government. The party or parties with majority support in the House forms the government, with the leader becoming the Prime Minister. The government can only continue in office as long as it retains that support. Thus, the House of Representatives is the keystone for the continuance of the system of responsible government at the national level. The principal functions are to make government, to make laws, critical examination and discussion of government administration and policy, and the control and overseeing of government expenditure, debating matters ranging from those of national or international significance to those affecting individuals, and the airing of grievances by receipt of petitions. There are 148 members of the House of Representatives, and here all of the states, New South Wales being the most populous, has 50 representatives, Victoria 37, Queensland 26, Western Australia 14, South Australia 12, Tasmania 5, and the territories, Australia Capital Territory 3 and Northern Territory 1. The presiding officer of the House of Representatives is the Speaker. He or she is a member of the House and is elected as Speaker by the House. And there we have the same about the quorums and voting. So the chamber itself is green, whereas the Senate is red. Very like the House and Lords in Britain. And there is the floor plan for the House of Representatives chamber. And you can see the Speaker sits there. The government on the Speaker's right and the opposition on the left. A very similar order of business for the day, except with notable question time. Private members' business and a typical week. Committees. And here we have making an act of Parliament. The stages that occur before a government bill is introduced to Parliament. Approval by executive government. New legislation ranked in order of priority. Drafting instructions. Supporting material. The minister responsible for the bill seeks clearance from the Parliamentary Party members, and then the bill is printed and ready for introduction in Parliament. The different stages of this bill before it is voted to an act of law, act of Parliament. Here we have it. It goes from the House of Representatives to the Senate, and then the Governor General puts a stamp on it after it's passed through the Senate. The ministries or government, executive council there, parliamentary reporting staff, this looks to be the Commonwealth since 1901. So different things that were enacted. British New Guinea becomes the Australian territory of Papua. King Edward VII grants Australia its first coat of arms. High Court is increased to 7 justices. 1924 compulsory voting at federal elections. Sir Isaac Isaacs becomes the first Australian-born Governor-General. 1920, Australia becomes an original member of the League of Nations. Western Australia votes in a referendum on April 8th, 1933 to secede from the Commonwealth and form a separate nation. Britain in 1935 rejects the Western Australia request for legislation to enable it to succeed. Look, it's a very clear majority that wanted to secede, but it didn't work because Britain rejected it. All kinds of interesting things happening here. (1967) A referendum to empower the Commonwealth to make laws for Aboriginals and to include Aboriginals in the national census. (1978) Federal Parliament approves the construction of a new and permanent Parliament House on Capitol Hill, Canberra. The site had been chosen by the Parliament in 1974, and the Northern Territory granted self-government. And a list of Governors-General of Australia since 1901, or Federation. Prime Ministers since 1901, Edmund Barton being the first. Leaders of the opposition. Ministries. And our glossary of parliamentary terms. There we have. You can see here the centre of the new Parliament building in Canberra. Very modern, on the side of a hill. I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at some notes on Australia's Parliament, or the Parliament of Commonwealth of Australia, as well as the paper sounds in the letter. I hope you're having a beautiful August transition from the height of summer. Enjoy it, my friend. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others, and as always,